Hello everyone, in this video we're going to talk about what is known as the percent equation. So we're going to use this equation to find a part of a whole number, the percent that a part of a whole number is, and then also the whole number. So if you notice here we have our equation x equals p percent times w, where x is the part, p is the percent, and w is the whole. So we have 6 examples here in this video, 2 where we're going to find the part, 2 where we're going to find the percent, and 2 where we're going to find the whole number, and they're going to be in that order. And we've got them color coded based on the variable that is represented. So x is the part, that's in our light blue color, we're going to do that first. And then we have our navy blue color, which is where we're going to find the percent, that will be 3 and 4. And then 5 and 6 will be where we find the whole number, and that'll be in the red color. Okay, so let's jump in with numbers 1 and 2, where we want to find the part. So number 1 says, what number is 10% of 40? So we have our percent there, so obviously we're not trying to find p. And then it says, what number is 10% of 40? Well, we know 10% would be a portion of the whole number, right? So that therefore 40 is our whole number, and that tells us that we need to find x, which is our part. Okay, so we could set up an equation, say x is equal to, now when we write our percent, let's write this as a fraction over 100, because that's what percent is, right? So 10% would be 10 over 100 and then times 40, okay? All right, now we're just going to solve this for x. There's a couple different ways we could do this. Sometimes if we simplify our numbers first, it might make our calculations a little bit easier. So if we check out 10 over 100, we could drop a 0 off of each of those. So this could be x is equal to 1 over 10 times 40. And so now we're just going to multiply straight across. So this would be 40 over 10. And we're going to say x is equal to 4. So what number is 10% of 40? 4 is 10% of 40. Okay. Now, one thing I want you to notice about that, anytime you're working with 10%, remember 10% is like 10 over 100, which is like 1 over 10, which is kind of, if we think about it, it's kind of like dividing by 10. So when we do that, remember we've talked about this in previous videos, if we multiply by 10, we move the decimal once to the right. Well, if we divide by 10, we move that decimal once to the left. And that's essentially what we're doing here, right? 40%, or excuse me, 40 is our whole number. What's 10% of it? Well, we move that decimal once to the left and it becomes 4.0, which is 4. Okay, so that's kind of a quick mental math way to find 10%. And then from there, if we know that's 10%, well, then we could just multiply by whatever number we want. Let's say we wanted to find 70%. Well, okay, find 10% of the number and then multiply that by 7, and that would be 70%. So kind of a lot of different ways to use mental math to quickly and maybe more efficiently arrive at some of these percentages, parts, whole numbers, so on and so forth. Let's look at number 2. What number is 75% of 80? So we're going to say x is equal to 75%, which would be 75 over 100, and then times 80. So now, if you have a calculator and you're using it, yes, you could just do 75 times 80 and then divide that by 100. But if you do not have a calculator, maybe you see, hey, 75 over 100, that's like 3/4. So we could simplify this to 3/4 and then times 80, and this is like times 80 over 1. So 3 times 80 would be 240, and then we're going to divide that by 4. Okay, so now 240 divided by 4, well, 24 divided by 4 would be 6, and then we can add our 0 there at the end. So 60 would be 75% of 80. Okay, so first 2 examples, we found part of the whole number. Now let's take a look at how we can find the percent. Okay, so number 3. 3 is what percent of 60? So now, once again, we see 2 numbers, but we don't see a percent. So now that tells us that we're trying to find p in our equation. So x would be our part of our whole number. So that's going to be 3. So we're going to say 3 is equal to, and we'll write this as x over 100 times 60. Actually, instead of x, let's use p, because that's the variable we used in our equation at the very beginning. Okay. Now notice how I wrote this over 100, because that's what we were doing in the same thing for examples 1 and 2. We wrote those percentages as a fraction over 100. Just going to make it easier for us to solve for our missing percent. Okay. So now here, let's multiply straight across. So we're going to get 3 is equal to 60p over 100. Now what if we multiplied both sides by 100? So now this is going to give me 300 is equal to 60p. And now we can divide both sides by 60, okay? Now, when we look at this, we notice that we have a couple zeros we could cross off. So this would be the same as 30 divided by 6. and we're going to say p is equal to 5. So we'll put a little percent by this because this would be 5%. So 3 is 5% of 60. All right, number 4, 18 is what percent of 20? So we can set this one up the same way. 18 is equal to p over 100 and times 20, okay? So let's multiply again. So 18 is equal to 20p times 100, or over 100. Now let's multiply both sides by 100. Okay, so that's going to get rid of that denominator. So now we have 1800 or 1800 is equal to 20p. And let's divide both sides by 20. Okay, so once again, those zeros will cancel out. And we have 180 divided by 2. So we're going to say p is equal to 90%. So 18 is 90% of 20. Okay. All right, so now we found a part in 1 and 2. We found the percent in 3 and 4. So now our last two examples, let's find our whole number. Okay, so number 5 says 4 is 80% of what number? So we can say 4 is 80% of what number? Okay, so now one thing I'm going to do is simplify 80 over 100. So this is 4 is equal to. Now I'm not going to simplify it all the way. I'm just going to simplify it a quick, easy way that we see that should involve maybe a little bit less time in thinking about. So we see we have a couple zeros here. Those will cancel out. So this is 8 over 10 times w. Okay. Now we might also see that that's 4/5. Okay, that's great. If you see that, go ahead and simplify it. If not, just leave it as 8 over 10. It's fine. So now this is going to be 4 is equal to 8w over 10. Let's multiply both sides by 10. So now we're going to get 40 is equal to 8w. And now we divide both sides by 8. And we're going to get w is equal to 5. So 4 would be 80% of 5. All right. Our last example, 36 is 180% of what number? Okay, so this is the first example where we've had over 100%. So we should expect to see a number larger than 36 in this case. All right, so 36 is 180% of what number? So let's write our equation. 36 is equal to 180 over 100 times w. Once again, I see a couple zeros here that could cancel. So let's write this as 36 equals 18 over 10 times w. So now we're going to say 36 is equal to 18w over 10, and I'm going to multiply both sides by 10 to get rid of that denominator. So now we have 360 is equal to 18w. Let's divide both sides by 18. Okay, so we're going to get w is equal to, if we do 360 divided by 18, we get 20. Okay, so 36 is 180%. I know at the beginning of this problem I said we should be expecting to find a number larger than 36. Well, I mentioned that a little bit incorrectly. What I meant to say was the number that we're trying to find should be less than 36, because what does it say? 36 is 180% of what number? Which means 36 is over, like more than our number that we're trying to find, right? So our number that we're trying to find is 20. Okay, so 36 would be 180% of 20, right? So 100% of 20 would be 20, right? We're taking all of it. So we're going more than that. So 36 is 180% of 20, and that's how you can use the percent equation to find a part of a whole number, a percent, and also the whole number itself.